Back to the Majority Report. Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Libby Watson. She's a writer for Splinter. Libby, how you doing? Thanks for doing this.
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So I want to talk, and let's use the your accent to maximum advantage and talk about Brexit first. It was a pretty intense last couple of days. Theresa May's Brexit proposal went down by a significant margin. I think it was like, what was it, like 404 to 200 or something like that? I know it's not the exact number, but it was a big loss. And then Jeremy Corbyn's motion of no confidence, which would have dissolved the May government and gotten us into elections, was rejected as well. The Lib Dems, which I guess are, how would you describe liberal Democrats to an American audience? What is that party like? Like, where would they be if they were in the United States, other than also irrelevant?
Yeah, that's a good question. So basically, they are. I think in American terms, they would still be pretty left. I mean, they're kind of similar to the Democrats. They're kind of what the sort of centrist to conservative side of the Democrats would be if they were a different party. They are also just like completely irrelevant these days. I mean, they haven't been in government. The Liberal Party was in government in the 1920s, and that's the last time they actually had a prime minister. Then they formed a coalition with the Conservative Party in 2010, and basically just like completely threw out everything that they supposedly stood for, including they campaigned on abolishing tuition fees and then signed off on the Conservatives tripling tuition fees. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know about them.
That does. That definitely tells you everything you need to know about them. And they refused to back Labor's no confidence vote. Their leader, Vince Cable, said since he appears, he's talking about Corbyn, appears determined to play party political games rather than acting on the wishes of his own members and MPs. And that is very ironic given what you just, I mean, basically, like as you said, I think it was Nick Clegg became the deputy prime minister to David Cameron after running a campaign against university tuition fees and to protect social spending after the recession. Yeah, I mean, he signed, and then their bragging was like, oh, well, it was going to be like double worse in the private meetings. So like we should get credit for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they ran to the left to try and get any votes at all, and then went into government with a terrible conservative, austerity, social welfare slashing government.
So and now they're opposing this Corbyn no confidence vote. So I guess what's your sense of where this goes from here? I guess it's like, okay, so Corbyn wants to go to elections because this government has it's done, but the Tories won't. The Tories are still going to keep her there or maybe replace her with somebody else, but obviously they don't want to lose power. The Lib Dems, to the extent they have a few votes, are just concerned about remaining in the EU. And then Tony Blair's back on the scene, being like, I think we need to have another referendum, blah, blah, blah. So how do all these forces interact together, and what do you think, how do you think it's going to play out over the next couple of weeks?
I mean, I think the only truthful answer I can give is that I have no idea.
Yeah.
And no one has any idea. But I mean, I think the thing with Corbyn is that I think if it were, and this isn't to say that I would want it to be another Labour leader because I love Corbyn, but I think if it were a different Labour leader, then the dynamics may be slightly different, because I think the Lib Dems and the Tories are so terrified of a Labour victory, which I think would happen if there were an election. I think they're so terrified of a Labour victory that they won't do what the only reasonable thing to do is, which is to call to support a no confidence motion or call for a general election or whatever. So that being the case, there's no force to push Theresa May out, which is incredible. I mean, her ability to hang on against all odds is really is quite astounding. So I mean, I really don't know, because the problem is that um, the EU. I don't see the EU budging, or like giving a different deal. At the time that the deal was formed, they said like, this is the deal. If you don't like it, then goodbye. So I mean, my fear is that we end up with a no deal Brexit, because they just can't get it together, and it's only what, 6 weeks or 2 months or something until that happens. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'm going to tell my mum to start, stocking up on bananas and tomatoes, because I think we might end up with a no deal scenario.
And so, I mean, do you think that there's people? I know that like the business community obviously mostly opposed it because of how disruptive it is. But on the other hand, it's like, do you think that I don't know. I could see a lot of right wing forces in the UK being like, all right, well, so like here's the time to just become like, we're just going to try to be like the Dubai or Singapore off of Europe. We're going to get rid of the NHS, and we're just going to be even like a more pure financial hub with like closed borders.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I honestly, this whole, ever since the vote, I don't know what the kind of no deal crowd has been thinking. I mean, I think a lot of them, especially, the not so much the sort of, actual British people that, would be okay with a no deal, but the Tory politicians that have gone in on it, I feel like they did this for politically expedient reasons. Boris Johnson, for example, is a big, like, hard Brexit guy. And, he's not stupid. Like, he knows that a no deal would be terrible or whatever, but he's found it politically advantageous to position himself as a sort of posh version of Nigel Farage. And not that Nigel Farage isn't posh, but, Boris Johnson is like the poshest guy in the world. But now we're
Look
getting
these
to the point
people
where
up if you haven't heard of them. They are really like, they're every British stereotype imaginable. If you don't know who, you probably know who Boris Johnson is. Some people might not know who Nigel Farage is, but how would you describe Nigel Farage to people?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, you might have seen him if you watch a lot of Fox News.
Yeah.
I'm guessing none of your listeners do.
Probably not.
He was the leader of the UK Independence Party, famous only for pushing for Brexit and for being horribly anti-immigration and anti-Islam. He's a sort of horrible frog-faced posh guy who like wanders around in wellies and drinks a pint and pretends to be all British, but of course has a German wife.
That son of a bitch. Are you serious?
Oh yeah, yeah.
He has a German wife. That's
Yeah.
like the only way you should be anti-immigrant, is not having a German spouse.
In Britain, for sure.
Yeah, what a bastard. No, and elsewhere, Libby. Come on, let's be serious. No, I'm just playing. We actually do have a lot of German viewers. I apologize. Please don't be triggered. It was an opportunity to make fun of Nigel Farage, who is, I mean, honestly, really is like, this is a good time, I think, in general, obviously, because, Trump, Farage, Boris Johnson, people actually treated Bolsonaro like a joke in Brazil. There's a lot of people. There's no contradiction between being, a complete jackass and a figure of correct like mockery and ridicule, and also really evil, and like given power to seriously harm people's lives. Like there's no contradiction there.
Well, the funny thing about Farage is that, I mean, UKIP never had more than like 3 or 4 MPs. He lost his. He ran for Parliament last time, and he didn't win. And UKIP, even after the Brexit vote, has been kind of pretty sidelined. I think that's partly because of the Conservative Party, and Theresa May kind of really going for the hard Brexit. That hard Brexit line. But this guy, like, no one, he has no power, and he keeps getting invited on telly to talk about Brexit. And people keep asking him what he thinks about Brexit. It's like, this man is just a posh guy in a pair of wellies now. Like, you really don't have to ask him what he thinks.
I'm sorry. What are wellies? Oh, boots.
I'm sorry.
Oh, look at no, it's all right. Matt Leck, our senior UK translator, got me. All right, they're boots.
Yeah, like rain boots.
Yeah, he looks like a penguin in them. I have seen the boots. I just didn't know what they were called. two more UK related questions, and one is also going to just be another personality that people should probably know and not like, but then a bigger question. So I saw, and people probably have a sense that a guy named David Cameron, who was another one of these like hysterically posh and like sort of gentry power inheritance figures in the UK. He became UK Prime Minister, I believe, in 2010. And he also his whole first branding campaign was actually like, no, I'm like the pro environment, like I'm super hip, I'm like a different kind of Tory. And in addition
Yeah.
to just pounding and decimating the country with austerity, which is his prime legacy, he then, as a sop to the far right and to try to suck the oxygen out of UKIP and BNP, he basically was like, yeah, let's just have a Brexit referendum, which of course he lost. And then I don't think we have it on us, but we had a lot of fun when he resigned and the hot mic caught him walking off and just after resigning, he just hummed to himself. Do you remember that? He was like,
Yeah.
doot, doot,
Yeah, I remember
doo.
that. Absolute
Right.
sociopath. Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw the other day that he was in Costa Rica renting a surfboard.
Great. That's great. I mean, honestly, I was talking to my friend about this the other night. He's really played it very smart because, like, I think he will be, even though this is all completely his fault, I think history will kind of forget him. Like you say, that this is all because of him. I think there was a Financial Times article at the time that revealed that he decided to do this at a pizza restaurant in Chicago O'Hare Airport. Just kind of on a whim, like you say, to shore up, because he thought that that would be the end of it all, and it super wasn't. But now, like you say, he's surfing in Costa Rica. Meanwhile, Theresa May is having an absolute nightmare. And believe me, I loathe Theresa May. I don't actually care that she's personally experiencing a nightmare. But I think she will be remembered for handling this very poorly. Whereas I think David Cameron's kind of gotten away with it by resigning and just disappearing.
It's doot doot doo. All right, we got to get that back, man. That is one of the most amazing. Like, I just totally messed everything up. Doot doot doo.
My actual favorite Cameron hot mic was when they caught him on a hot mic making fun of Yorkshire, which is in the north of England, and he's from the south of England, very posh. A lot of north-south tension in the UK, and he sounds even posher when he's like in private than he does in public. Like
Jesus.
In the UK, at least for let's say in the 70s, people would pretend to be posher than they were. Like Margaret Thatcher apparently learned how to speak with a more posh accent because she wanted to like fit in with all the Tories. But I think David Cameron actually toned down the posh when he's talking to the public because he's so posh, so elite that he just sounds ridiculous.
All right, so David Cameron and Boris Johnson, these two, and obviously as an American, I'll just throw around, it's pure speculation as I'm mindful of UK libel laws, but I would speculate potentially inbred children of unbelievable privilege. Yeah, they just did Brexit. And now another, incredibly bizarre and horrific. And anybody who ever feels bad for Theresa May, just look up Windrush on Google, and any sympathy you have for her will completely evaporate. But my last question about this is, okay, I think my sense, and obviously you know better than me, but my sense is that yes, almost any other labor leader, there would probably be elections happening right now because this is catastrophic and there's no credibility left in this government, and you can have a snap election, right? And okay, and and I support Jeremy Corbyn too. I'm not sure he's handling every part of Brexit correctly, but I also know that Brexit isn't the only thing, and I know his plans to reverse austerity and workers' cooperatives. I mean, he's providing actually some incredible ideas and speaking to the big issues of our time, and he definitely would be, no doubt in my mind, a better prime minister and a very good prime minister compared to certainly, obviously, Theresa May. But just even in the normal rules of politics, when you have a total failure, you make a change. And in this process of total fear that all of the UK establishment, I guess, just use that word, has about Jeremy Corbyn, they're prolonging and intensifying like an actual crisis. So it's like I guess it's like, doesn't that juxtaposition actually prove all of like Corbyn's points about this ruling class? It's like, oh, if Jeremy Corbyn's prime minister, it's going to be like Venezuela. So what we'll do is make it like what we say Venezuela is like right now, to not have this guy, to not have an election or democratic accountability. We will accelerate an actual crisis, not a hypothetical one, to not live out our fears, which we've made up in our own heads.
Right, exactly. No, I totally agree. And I agree that I don't think Corbyn has handled Brexit quite as well as he could have. And I mean, it is difficult because there are a lot of issues with, a lot of the kind of more Blair wing of the party
Right.
want him to call for another referendum. And that is, I mean, the thing is like, I think, they kind of want all this to be over and for us to go back to how it was before, which, like, I understand, because there's no way that Brexit is going to sort of benefit the UK. Like, any scenario is going to be, we're going to be worse off. Having said that, the EU is not a good institution. And I think Corbyn is kind of that old 80s left mold, like really, really left,
Yep.
and hating the EU for that reason.
For the
So
right reasons.
For the correct reasons, exactly. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that Brexit would be good, or that that would be the best way for Britain to change the EU. So it is tricky, and I don't know, because he's also in a difficult place, because if we call another referendum and we get the same result, then like what have we done then? Then it's like that would be even worse. And I don't know that there would be a different result. So it is tricky. But like I said, like big Corbyn supporter. I think I'm 100% confident he would handle this better. But like you say, they're all completely terrified of him. I mean, if you go back and look at the way that the media reacted when Corbyn was elected party leader in 2015, it's actually remarkably similar to the way that the media reacts to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez now. Yeah. Just any little story, any little, theoretical inconsistency in his leftism. There was one of the big stories was that, like, he went to some veterans event and like ate the sandwiches and he wasn't supposed to, or something like that, which was amazing.
Disaster.
And there was the whole thing about like, not kneeling before the Queen or something, and like not singing the national anthem and stuff. And this was all like mainstream papers that were reporting this. This wasn't like our version of the Daily Caller. It was like our version of, I don't know, the New York Post or even the Washington Post.
Right.
It's like
Wow.
completely balmy like stuff. And like sort of just trying to make any kind of argument that he either was inappropriately un-British, or trying to catch him out, being a weirdo. There was a lot of reporting on him being just like a weird guy, like he wears jumpers a lot and has a collection of manhole
What are
covers and
jumpers?
stuff.
Jumpers.
Sorry,
and sweaters. Okay.
sweaters.
All right. Thank you. I'm learning.
Yeah.
Well, then there was that time when he promised in I think it was in 2016, where he said he was going to run train on the socialist agenda. That caused a lot of heat.
I wish he had done that.
What about Urban Dictionary, Mr. Corbyn?
Yeah. That would have been even funnier than her doing it. Yeah.
That would have been. I mean, it would be very hard for me to support him even more. That's particularly funny because there is a parallel universe where I could hear Bernie Sanders saying that. There's none where I could hear Jeremy Corbyn saying that.
No, not at all.
Okay, so all right, yeah. I mean, we'll just keep pushing for, and I mean, he should be prime minister, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And I hate that it happens this way because it caused a lot of harm. But I mean, every piece of any credibility that the business, the press class, the political class had is gone. So think about that while they hyperventilate about this guy.